Properties and Sustainability Committee meeting on Tuesday, May 2nd at 6 p.m. Yep. Okay, sure. Thanks, Brad. We're just getting the meeting recorded. If you hang tight for just a moment.
Recording in progress.
All right, we got it. Thank you for your patience. We do have a quorum, and visual roll call is okay? All right, great. I will introduce Chris Stoa, newest member of the committee. He's on the village board, and he was just confirmed to the committee last night. So welcome, Chris.
It's great to be here.
And the agenda was properly posted? Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. Then we'll move on to item 3, public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. We do have a number of residents in the room with us tonight. For those of you watching online, I do have a couple of forms, and then we'll see if any others would like to speak. So I'd start with Ed DeMeo. Great, thank you. And he's at 221 Forreston Drive. And if, 229. Oh, okay, hard to tell, 1 and 9. If you wouldn't mind switch on the top of the microphone so our virtual attendees can hear you as well. Thank you.
Check. We good? All right, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all for listening to us. I am one of the residents of the Forreston Drive area, Arbory Court area. I wanted to acknowledge the letter that you guys had provided to us in the last 10 days, give or take. And that provided an opportunity for all of the people that reside around the boundary of that green space to have a discussion and talk about what was in the letter and how we live and how that property is being managed and how it has been managed. So what I wanted to do to start with is to read a letter that I had drafted and that I had circulated amongst all of the neighbors. The vast majority have signed off on it, and I'll read their names and signatures in, but I would just like to get that on the record for you. Letter is addressed to Brian Peterson, Department of Public Works. Dear Mr. Peterson, this last week we received communication regarding the village-owned land adjacent to the Forest Ridge subdivision. The Forest Ridge subdivision was developed in 1991. Included in the development is a village-owned portion, parcel ID 071109454196, which includes drain tile, electrical, and water sewer infrastructure. The development's covenants are clear about the expectations of the subdivision's aesthetics regarding non-structural areas. Please see the attached covenants for reference. For 32 years, this area has been mowed and maintained to covenant levels. The village maintained the village-owned portion to the subdivision aesthetic expectations by mowing, trimming, and general upkeep for 18 years, until 2009. Since then, for the last 14 plus years, the residents of Forreston Drive and Arbory Court have been responsible for caring and maintaining that space at the same level of expectation outlined in the covenants. We support the clarification in the letter received that no trees should be removed from village-owned portion of our development, nor that the portion should have permanent structures, be tampered with, expanded, or otherwise changed. We are committed to maintaining the tree line, the marsh line as indicated in the letter. In the event that maintenance has occurred beyond those boundaries, it will cease. We are concerned that the letter indicates the direction to discontinue mowing and maintaining the grass area in the village-owned portion entirely. This is of concern for 2 reasons. First, it violates subdivision covenants regarding the aesthetic level of non-structural areas expected in the neighborhood. Covenants which have been in effect for 32 years and were in effect when each of us purchased our own properties. 2, it renders useless the function the space was intended for, a grassy park-like area in the heart of the village for our neighborhood to enjoy. The neighborhood children use this space extensively for running, playing, and exploring nature. We have 14 children between Forreston Drive and Arbory Court under the age of 14 that all use this space. They move about it freely, behind not only their own homes, but that of the neighbors. Adults gather here too occasionally for socializing. Leaving this area unmowed and unmaintained will render it unsafe for future play. We ask respectfully that you allow us to continue to maintain and use that space as it has been for the last 32 years. The residents that have signed are myself, Ed DeMeo, and Suzanne Warburg at 229 Foreston Drive, Dave Viken at 221 Foreston Drive, Jim and Cindy Kelm Nelson at 223 Foreston Drive, Brian and Courtney Stickney at 237 Foreston Drive, Jeff Hansen at 104 Arbory Court, and Michelle Benedict at 108 Arbory Court. So as you can see from the takeaway, I think, the key perspective for us is that, the neighbors are all in agreement as to how we want to use the space, how the space has been maintained, and our dedication to maintaining that space for the village and for our neighborhood. So we respectfully ask that you allow it to be maintained in the manner it has been for the last 32 years, and that you would revisit this topic at a future date.
Thank you. And just wanted to remind those of you that it's not on the agenda for discussion tonight, so we can't have a back and forth about it, but I appreciate, if we can discuss adding this for future agenda item and can always let you know. So just want to remind for all the residents here, but thank you for reading your comments.
Do you need me to provide copies so that you have these as a record from today's date?
Is that the same letter that you had distributed? That we have a copy of it and add to the record? Okay, and then I have this information to add to the record also.
Okay.
Thank you so much. All right, the next form I have is Steve, is it Bus? I'm not so good at reading.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm on 225 Foreston.
Okay, at 225 Foreston.
Yeah, I guess my only part here after receiving the letter, my largest concern is that if we let it go back, because the letter said remove the structures by August 1st and then return the structure to natural. My concern is when we moved in, it was always maintained by the village. That was 21 years ago. So natural to us is mowed. And I don't want it to go back to field or marsh because then we have issues with mosquitoes, we have issues with mice in the winter. And it just makes it a lot easier for us if it's mowed. We maintain it. It's nothing more for the village to do. So that's my piece of it. I don't have anything to say about the structures. Because I don't have any structures on it. But I just want to be able to maintain it as it was for the last 20-some years for us. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I don't have any other forms. Would anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay. I do expect it to be added for future agenda items. Just so you know, you're more than welcome to stick around for the rest of our meeting, but we won't have a discussion on it tonight. We have to give it proper notice. So I appreciate the time, and of course, yes, you're more than welcome to stick around if you like. Right. Thank you. Oh, sure, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Now we can move on then to item 4, old business, update on solar panels for MSB.
Not much of an update, Heidi. We're about 2 weeks out. We're just waiting for the brains of it, so to speak. But everything else is done. So we're in a good place, but we just got a couple more weeks yet.
Okay. We'll continue to keep everyone up to date if we plan on then some kind of event around them. Once we get some kind of data collected and something to show off, I think is probably the ideal time. All right, great. Hopefully those things come in on time. Well, we have some bright sunshine, long days. Thank you. Then we also have coming back, discuss and consider message board use guidelines, which we talked about previously. Brian, if you have anything to add on that.
We already had another request come in. Well, one was from the Lions Club. We're going to be posting that Monday. But we had another one come in for the previous private industry, requesting to use it for, I believe I forwarded you the email, Heidi, I can't remember the exact dates, but it was for an extended period of time, using it for a farmer's market. You know, however, which way we decide to go with this. I would like it to maybe be, you know, maybe a discussion for myself and the chair of the committee, you know, to kind of approve these moving forward. And that one is obviously, that one has to be discussed,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think that one, it wasn't till June though, so we could put it on next meeting.
Correct,
Okay.
yep.
All right. Yeah, that is kind of one that I would rather not make a call on, so I think that this covers us pretty well on guidelines. Yeah.
My only recommendation on this one, Brian, just to alleviate potentially some of your time, is the full message that is requested to be displayed. If you've got a form like this that you send it to them, I'd suggest you give the number of character
Characters.
spaces and rows.
Yeah.
And let them come up with it and you approve it, rather than you trying to fit their message cryptically into
Right.
those cells.
You know, and that's a very good point. I've tried that in the past, and generally it just comes like, well, here you go, kind of figure it out type thing, and which is fine. And that's why I put it down at the bottom to kind of give me a little bit of latitude as far as trying to make it fit in the
Yeah.
characters. But I can adjust that, that's fine.
I still think if you put the character spaces on there.
Sure.
And let them at least give an attempt to it.
I can
And if
do
they
that.
don't do it, then you can always send it back and say, no, you fill this
course.
out and then we will do it.
Not a problem, yeah, we can attach that to that request.
The other thing I was thinking of, I noticed last weekend maybe, it was up west on BB, and all I saw was Norman Vethy, and I drove past it. So,
And that's,
I guess either quick it up or
well,
push it back further.
and
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing, you can't, yeah, I mean, we can only speed it up so fast, but when you're going 35, it's hard to really get a full message out. That's why, you know, generally they're used for construction ahead. Very simple, quick, small ones. So when you have those larger 3-page messages, you really don't get the whole visual of it. So, and that's what's difficult, right? To meet these requests is you're not really able to do, you know, you're not really able to fulfill their full request because you know it's, you know, they're in spots where it is 35, 40 miles an hour.
So we're looking to then approve the form, but we could add modifications so that you don't have to bring it back again. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it as it's shown, with the addition of some character spaces to help alleviate having to decipher what they want to say.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the board use guidelines. Any other comments on that? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Great, thank you for getting that back to us. Then we can move on to discuss sustainability projects for consideration in the 2024 to 2033 capital prioritization plan. Just a little brief background. The board did kind of a 10-year outlook last year, and we're looking to do more of a prioritization plan coming up starting later this month. We'll kind of kick off the process. Since we have a lot of capital needs and we have to figure out how to prioritize them. So sustainability doesn't really fall under any staff member. So Cameron's here to collect that for us. So Cameron, I'll turn it over to you. Cameron is our finance director in case anyone hasn't met him yet.
And I apologize, I would have loved to be there tonight, it just didn't quite work out. So again, as Heidi was mentioning, this is one piece to the puzzle overall. And as Heidi had mentioned, since sustainability isn't its own department, this is how we will facilitate the sustainability requests. So what I'm challenging this committee to do is come up with some ideas for us to then internally do some research on, come back with the cost of what those projects would be, and then during next month's meeting, a formal kind of recommendation to the finance department for projects to be considered as part of the 10-year plan. So I guess I'll kick it off to the committee members to discuss any ideas or recommend any ideas that they'd like us to look into.
Sorry. I think the one that we've been kind of working on, I'll get my hands off this here in a second, is, and we've done a great job, I think, but I don't know if it's sustainable over the long term, and that's the compost pile and a lot of that will rely on what we do with the building itself and the property itself, but that's one that I think as a community we've always been looking to try to have some place that you can take your leaves, your grass clippings, branches, et cetera. And I think the staff has done a great job, but maybe we need to look at something long-term.
Sorry, Heidi.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were actually looking at moving it, Andy, between the salt shed and Bonnie garage. There's a nice big green space area that would allow us a little more area to work with, so we're not pressed up against Toby's shop. You know, we wouldn't be, so we are looking at areas, you know, I'm trying to match fiscal responsibility with, you know, good use of our space that we have. I think that's one area that we're looking at moving it to. So it's generally the same area. You know, the hesitation with brush is being that it's not secured site on the weekends. There is a possibility, and we've had it before, where I'm assuming it's a contractor's dropped off an enormous pile of brush, which in thoughts is like, okay, well, what's the big deal? Well, we can only take 6 inches or lower, or 6 inches or smaller over to Purple Cow, who we're contracted out with. So it's the idea of having to sift through that, you know, the manpower that takes. And I mean, until we get a secured site, it's a little hard to allow the brush. I mean, it does happen occasionally anyway, but to all out just say you can just dump anything here might get a little tough to deal with in the fall when we get that heavy flow of leaves and grass.
But the changes will require some, like even if we move it with what we're doing now, like it'll still require, I'm not sure if it's a big enough expense to be in this, but maybe.
No, I just wanted to just add a little bit to Andy's thought and where he was, you know, because I know we originally talked about moving it over maybe to that green space next to the shop or next to our offices. I just think this spot's probably a little more fiscally responsible on our end, just to say, you know, let's get more space for now until we get a little more direction as far as the buildings and their facility study.
Yeah, I think I'd also heard from residents things like cardboard drop-off or the little plastic things, your contacts come in. Apparently, like the Monona Library has a drop-off where you can put, like, because a lot of people use daily contacts, and then you have those plastic things every day. But yeah, I don't.
Cardboard's a good one. I mean, we all get the Amazon package once a week, and that's my job, is to go in the garage and cut it in little pieces and fit it in the recyclable container.
Yeah, with every 2 weeks, it fills up fast.
So I guess my question, Heidi and Cameron, is, are you asking about like large-scale solar on other buildings? What kind of capital projects size-wise are we looking for?
You know, again, we're not necessarily looking for kind of things to spend money on. We're trying to think about this from a strategic, where we want to see the village in 10 years from a sustainability perspective. Once, along with all the other projects that the village has to do, they'll get graded based off of a need, kind of a need, would like to have, okay, would be good, but not the quite time to do it yet. Once we have all the projects in totality, we'll be able to shift and decide on what we can do. But I do think it's good. It would be a good idea, even if we may not be able to do it in the near future, start to identify some of these more strategic items. Like Heidi and I had talked about, you know, there's not a lot of charging stations in the village, so kind of discussing and potentially having some partnerships with some businesses to start putting in EV charging stations at strategic places throughout the village. you know, we would hope that we would continue to expand the solar panels once the facilities are more finalized to eventually get to that net zero impact. So, you know, as small as, you know, compost bins and rain barrels, and as big as, you know, several $100,000 worth of, you know, solar panel and sustainability. So I guess right now this is just a brainstorming stage, and then we can come back with what we think some of these costs would be at the next meeting for discussion. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was trying to understand.
I'd ask too, I mean, we're just a group of folks here with not all of the ideas. Have you thought, maybe you have, of maybe having like an open house or some way of reaching out to the rest of the community to get people, I'm sure, have a lot better ideas than I do.
We can certainly, with some direction from Heidi and Chris and the committee, maybe do some outreach. JJ is our social media guy, so we might want to talk about how we can get some feedback, but we can certainly reach out. And certainly we would encourage anybody, you know, as they're talking to people, other people in the community, to get feedback and what could we do better from a sustainability perspective.
When Cameron first mentioned this to me, kind of my first thought was, well, we should work sustainability things into all of the projects that we do. So if we're building the new community park shelter, which has been on the schedule, I'm not sure how that'll work in the process, to consider solar on top of that. So some of them will only happen if others happen, I guess, is we're not going to put solar on the old community park shelter. It would only be if there was a new one approved. So thinking about sustainability in all of our projects, and then some might be policy or review of the subdivision street widths and things like that to reduce street width, or putting in bicycle paths when we redo roads like we did on Oak Street, or it's kind of alongside a project, or requiring contractors to meet a certain percentage of recycling the used materials from a road project or something like that. So I don't know, those were kinds of some of the ideas I was thinking about when thinking about the sustainability stuff. That's harder to do like standalone project.
Yeah, I know larger state projects, there's Buy America requirements, and there's also the using of material that we use. That's fine, I just don't want to put ourselves in a position where now we're paying more for a project because we have these onerous requirements on our bids.
Sure.
You know, just something that, one other thing to consider is with these ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
Heidi,
Yeah, go ahead.
are there any public charging stations for electric vehicles in the village?
So Summit has a few chargers. I'm not sure if they're open to the public. Yeah, I'm not, they may or may not be.
I've heard
Okay.
of people using them that aren't some employees. They
So,
don't
yeah.
have a sign or anything prohibiting that.
Right. So I think those are the only ones I've ever seen. Yeah, over at Bakken, when we added the parking on Grove, I think we put in some conduit so we could put charging stations in the future. I feel like we talked about that, but I'm not positive. That was probably before Strand that we planned that.
For us, and I don't know if, I'd have to go back and double check on the conduit side of that.
Yeah.
I think it was a potential, but I don't know if it was ever decided. I'd have to go back and look at that.
But then that gets sticky with government selling energy or EV chargers. You need like private company to own the charger or something like that. State law.
Heidi, the one thing I will say is, speaking of chargers, depending on what happens with it, we do have a small lot left in the industrial park, or in the business park. Can always keep an eye on that, see what happens with it in the future. That can always be a, you know, it's a small enough site where not sure what else we would do with it, you know what I mean? It's Might be an ideal spot for it.
Where's that?
It's gonna be right next to Community One, between that and Jimmy John's.
Kind of by the well house.
I guess-
And one of the things that has been a glaring need that I guess I would propose that the committee consider is, currently, even if the village would wanna go electric on their vehicles, we don't have the infrastructure internally to charge the vehicles. So that would be a project that I would recommend that, what would it take to get, 2 or 3 internal charging stations? And then what would be some of the first steps to electrify the fleet, for the vehicles that make sense?
Yeah, and there'll be some time lag on vehicles that make sense here too, and even getting the vehicles, because bigger places are putting in giant orders, so to get to smaller orders.
And this is where I think, realistically, we're 5 years out from really adding any electronic, outside of hybrid, but pure electric vehicles from our fleet to get the infrastructure in place and to get order the vehicles so we're not paying significantly over what we should for a municipal vehicle.
No, and then now, like you said, now's the time to start planning as we're doing those remodels or new projects to be prepared to have that electrification in place.
Yeah, it's a good idea, because it's gonna be just a matter of time before that's the vehicle you'll have to purchase, because, everybody's moved over to that. I don't know if this is the right group for this, but Andy's wish list is to have a B-cycle station by the trailhead once we ever get this trail connected to Madison, so, if that's a governmental thing or a private thing, I'm not sure, but that would be another nice fixture.
We had been in, when it was Sustainability Committee, under that, we had talked about B-cycle a few different times, and B-cycle is kind of the one that's driving how fast we get that. And basically, they want to wait until we're connected to Madison, because they just started in McFarland, since they have that connection in now, and, yeah, so we have some contacts with them, so I hope that, I think it'd be a really great
Oh, yeah.
idea too,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the
Can you-
hotel. Mhm. Go ahead, JJ.
Sorry, Heidi, you're spot on, just an update, a company reached out to Aaron, looks like maybe they're trying to compete with B-Cycle. Anyway, I'm looking to schedule a meeting with their rep in the next couple of weeks and just see what they have to offer, because, yeah, you're right, B-Cycle is just kind of building out from Madison, so who knows when they'll be ready to put one here for us.
That might be a good one to add to the list if there's, it doesn't have to be B-Cycle brand. So over the course of the next month, if anyone thinks of something they'd like to add, can we somehow compile it, or how?
So what I would recommend is over the next 3 weeks, let's maybe put a deadline of, May 26th, to give me enough time to, once we identify a project, to start to get, okay, well, this is what the impact could be for a project that, and then we can reduce the project down to what we actually want to submit. I'm not sure, JJ, when the next meeting is for Public Works and Sustainability Committee.
We're June 6th?
Yeah, so that May 26th would give me enough time then to do the proper due diligence on it. And then JJ and I will work on a way to try to get some community feedback, because we do think that's important too.
Yeah, probably have some people that are, have a lot of experience in the area in Cottage Grove, and, yeah, if there's anything else I see from any other communities or other good ideas we could think of, but yeah. Anyone else have any other comments on this item? Okay, thanks, Cameron.
Thanks for having me.
All right. With that, then, we can move on to 5B, discuss and consider uniform allowance. And there was a memo in your packet from Brian? think, right? Free clothing allowance, yeah.
Yes. So it's pretty common to have a uniform allowance for our staff. Right now, we go through ELSCO, who does our mats and our uniforms for our crew people. And we've slowly noticed that we do have a cleaning company that comes in weekly, and it seems like they're taking out brand-new mats. We've decided to push those mat replacements back to a month instead of weekly. And with those savings, discontinuing also the uniforms that we get from ELSCO for our staff and going with the clothing allowance, which will help towards boots, jeans, jackets if they need them in the winter. Right now we offer $125 for a pair of boots. That's it. A really good pair of boots goes about $250, and you burn through them in a year. So that would allow you also to get rubber boots, knee highs. Our crews are dealing in all weather conditions. So this would go a long way to help that. It's going off of, I kind of just copied as far as the rollover for what's not used. It capped at 1,000. I don't know exactly what other departments have, but this mirrors another department that we have as far as that ability to roll that over. Obviously, the first year you come in a little higher. That's assuming you don't come in with anything, and then it drops down after that.
Well, if there's no discussion, I'm in favor of it. I'd make a motion to move forward with it as you have it described here.
I'll second it.
All right, great. We have a motion and a second to approve the allowance as written. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Right.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Will this be implemented then right away?
First of the year, it'll be in fiscal season.
sure,
So
that's right there.
yeah, it's right at the bottom. But no, it's just easier on everybody to just start that way.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Then we can move on to engineers report. I'll turn it over to you, Kyla.
Perfect, thanks Heidi. So engineers report was included in your packet, kind of overall summary. The Shady Grove subdivision, we're still waiting on Houston and the developer to request substantial completion. Been contacting them since the last fall to try to get on that, especially for the lift station. Lift station's up and running, but we want to make sure everything's been turned over to the village for their punch list. We worked with Authentics across the street here in the last month. They had 2 sanitary sewer dips that have been ongoing for the last couple months. One of them was repaired, as discussed with the developer and their contractor. The other one will be replaced. We just not have gotten a date. It's deeper, and so there's more implementing that goes on with that. It's about 14 feet deep. Cottage Grove Commons, there's a lot of sediment throughout there. If you drive through that development, we're still trying to work with the developer to make sure their ponds are cleaned out, to make sure everything's good to go. And then there were some other developments that came through, First Choice Dental, Drumlin Towers, as well as one for an expansion on Steel over in the Commerce Parkway. For the Village Public Works Project, the only outstanding item from last year for County Highway N is the RRFB. We've still been working with the contractor to get an update, and they have had issues getting in contact with their suppliers. So we're working on that monthly, if not weekly, with Cottage. We don't have an estimated time frame on when that's going to be completed, though. As Brian mentioned about the MSB solar, we're about 75% complete at this time. They are still anticipating to meet the end of May deadline. And then the 2023 streets improvements with the pulverizing of Crawford and some concrete replacement, that will be advertised in the middle of May. With a completion of, once they have the street pulverized, it has to be paved within 30 days to allow them to get that work and limit disruption for the village. That's all I've got, unless there's any questions.
I have a question. Excuse me. I don't know if you know anything about this, but there's a stretch of sidewalk out here between Authentics and the bank.
Yep.
Is there any update on
Last winter, when the Authentics first started, they tore that sidewalk up and they removed it right before the winter. And they had it gravelled all winter, and I noticed that it's still not paved, and it's on my list of things to do first thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Crawford and that whole section, just a mill, we're not doing any sewer water.
Nope, just some concrete work and some pulverizing of the asphalt.
That's probably just a short construction window, I'm guessing.
Correct, yep, there'll be a couple inlet replacements. Some of them are old brick structures, and so while we're digging up a portion of the road to remove the asphalt, they're gonna go ahead and replace those structures so they last longer.
And I know we talked about this last month. Are we gonna send letters out to the landowners, the neighbors, whatever, the residents? I guess they're duplexes mainly, so maybe it's the residents.
Yep, we can make sure, or was that the plan, I guess?
Yeah, generally they're sent out by the contractor.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Tyler? All right, great, thanks. Then we can move on to Brian's report.
Now, everything I had is pretty much on there. Just a quick update, the business park poles are being worked on right now. Running into a lot of rock. The idea was to directional bore a lot of that. They're having some problems getting through the earth that's over there, so they may be doing some trenching, which is, the idea is trenching is going to be cheaper, but our idea was to try and alleviate a lot of the restoration and work with the community.
Recording stopped.
My computer died. That's bad for my first time.
What'd you say? You're on the AP club.
I thought maybe we hit our time limit.
Yeah, that'd be a good policy.
Well, we're on the last, Kristen can keep up on these things.
We're good.
This is going to take a minute, but other than that, I didn't have anything else on my report.
Are those the lights in the Commerce Park?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Not related, just you said the directional drill word, which triggered my memory. Where is someone directional drilling south of town? Do you know what that's about? Is it coming through town?
TDS is working in the township, that I know.
He is.
Yeah, is in the township, but I don't know other than that. Like on Vilas and such?
No, when you take, they're out by Houston's right now, and they're coming from the interstate towards Cottage Road. And they're on, they have lanes shut down, so
Okay.
traffic control. And I was wondering if it was going to continue into the village or.
Do you see Brian, do you see the requests for land disturbance or something like that? If someone was, like TDS would be coming through, that would come through. Okay. Yeah, because we always want to get ahead of that.
Yeah, obviously we've had several calls from.
Recording in progress.
We're back. Sorry, folks, that was my fault. I apologize. We've had a few requests from Yarrow Hill area. I hope they don't make it as far as our committee here, but we're working with Alliant and trying to get those either later this week or early next week to get that restored.
Oh,
From-
on light poles that are out?
No, so this wasn't light poles. This was just electrical work that was trenched in.
Ah,
So all those do come, I think some of them still filter through JJ, but we're trying to get those all kind of, pushed down to myself. So, but no, those all come in front of us. But I don't have anything as far as,
all right, that's good.
yeah.
All right, any questions for Brian? All right, then on to some business to take care of. Item 8, approve the minutes of the April 11th, 2023 Public Works Properties and Sustainability Committee meeting. Any edits, comments, or a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 11th meeting?
I'll second.
I have a motion and second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Then set tentative date for next meeting. I have the 6th of June for our first Tuesday. Does that sound? All right. And future agenda items. So I think we'll add the forest and whatever we're calling.
I've got the forest and green space, solar panel update, just to kind of keep us advised, and then message boards with the character modifications on there.
Sure. And if we have any requests.
Well, that's,
we can-
yeah, I guess that's just from, I guess that's
Yeah.
my note, but,
Yeah.
yeah, those 2 items on there is what I have.
Okay, and then if we have any more to discuss on the capital projects.
Yeah, I would assume we'd have potentially a bid award by then, right? If it's coming out in early May,
Mhm.
by early June, we should know.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
it'll be, yes, it'll be at that meeting.
Okay. For the Crawford project, yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any other items for our next agenda? All right, with that, then, all we have left is one final item.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second. Non-debatable, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thanks so much, everyone, for your
Recording
time.
stopped.
Great night, hopefully we have spring tomorrow.